Lieutenant Commander Trixie Bragstone was supposed to be healing. That was the plan. The official U.S. Navy paperwork even said medically necessary leave in big bureaucratic bold, as if sunburn therapy and blender therapy were legitimate psychiatric protocols. And maybe they were, considering she'd spent the past 3 weeks evading any and all responsibility by building a tactical sun-lounging nest in her backyard made from a decommissioned stealth hammock, an illegal shipment of guava juice, and an old mission cooler labeled "Caution, Chupacabra contents unknown." She was halfway through a bubbly brunch blend she'd charmingly titled The Detonator, mostly champagne, some juice, a sprig of rosemary that might be plastic, when the sky shimmered, like someone tried to microwave a hologram, and a suspiciously effervescent UFO blinked into view over Iowa. Meanwhile, 90 light-years away, and 6 decimal points up their own egos, the Glorpent Dominion was in full conquest pregame. Supreme Brine Warden Glithrax gurgled with pride as his gelatinous tendrils fluttered over a holoslate, displaying the pièce de résistance of alien subtlety. Operation Bubbly Submission. "They will never resist mind control enzymes," he sloshed, blinking all 10 ocular nubs at once, when suspended in a citrus base and delivered via ritualistic human brunch drinking. His assistant, Spindlewort 7, barely reabsorbed a groan. His resume said biochemical strategist, but his job felt more like evil bartender with a spreadsheet. Still, he dutifully projected images of humans in bathrobes clinking glasses, while softly muttering, "YOLO." The enzyme, Neurozest 41X, bonded with orange pulp, entered the cerebellum, and gently whispered telepathic instructions like, "Obey the hive and consider folding your towels better." Glithrax, soaked in smugness, oozed a celebratory slime plume. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Trixie adjusted her sun hat, embroidered, not a phase, a threat assessment, and squinted at the mimosa in her hand. "Weird," she muttered. The third glass had started telling her to reorganize her spice rack by color frequency. She responded by hurling the glass at a passing drone, which exploded with all the enthusiasm of a security deposit refund. "Neat," she said, and poured another. The Glorpent agents had already begun deploying, disguised as artisanal sommeliers, brunch influencers, and one deeply suspicious food truck named the Juicy Compulsion. Cities like Brooklyn, Lisbon, and a party cruise off Florida were already 17% hive-minded and 83% too busy taking selfies to notice. One Glorpent operative disguised as Todd from Napa was already suspicious for calling carbonation nose sparkle and listing grapefruit-based subjugation as a pairing recommendation. Another had tried adding 8-dimensional citrus to a mimosa and liquefied into sentient marmalade mid-brunch. But none of that would matter if Trixie didn't notice what was happening, and unfortunately for the Glorpents, she did. Not because she was paying attention, mind you, but because her PTSD had rewired her to treat any unexpected vibe as a precursor to planetary invasion. The mimosa had told her to eat more kale, which she took as a declaration of war. She flipped over her beach table, dragged a cooler labeled for emergencies and salsa only from the shed, and activated her backup war blender. It screamed to life with a rumble that could disturb tectonic plates and puree a surveillance orb in one smooth cycle. "No one weaponizes brunch on my watch," she muttered. Then she took a tactical sip. Across the galaxy, Brine Warden Glithrax prepared for Phase 2, emotional synchronization. His plan relied on the idea that humans, once lightly brain-jellied with enzyme zest, would become agreeable, compliant, and tidy. But what he didn't know, what his research had deeply misunderstood, was that Earth's brunch drinkers weren't relaxing. They were recovering. From weddings, from exes, from whatever happened at that one office party with the fog machine. These weren't minds waiting to be controlled. These were minds armed with trauma, tequila, and endless passive-aggressive jokes. And worst of all, they were drunk enough to fight. Trixie watched another Glorpent surveillance drone buzz overhead, this one trailing a banner that read, "Harmonize your inner citrus." She laughed so hard she choked on her drink, rolled off the lounge chair, and accidentally smashed the drone with a garden gnome. "Brunch ain't therapy," she growled, cracking her knuckles. "It's a strategic reset between hangovers." She slung a towel over her shoulder like a bandolier, grabbed her mimosa, and opened her backyard panic crate. Inside, one waffle, Iron, her dead ex-husband's telepathic corkscrew, and an absolutely unnecessary flamethrower labeled S'more Justice. The Glorpins had no idea what they'd triggered. They thought they'd launched a subtle mental conquest. What they'd actually done was declare full-scale psychological warfare on a woman who once bench-pressed a shuttle door and listed champagne-based vengeance under her special skills. Earth was waking up, and it was still tipsy. Trixie Bragstone was already 3 tactical mimosas deep and wearing combat-grade flip-flops when the first alien sommelier infiltrated the farmer's market. She spotted him instantly, too smooth, too symmetrical, and using words like mouthfeel, while sampling pulpless orange juice. He introduced himself as Todd from Napa, which already reeked of intergalactic fraud because no real Todd from Napa wore a monocle over his third eye and tried to mansplain citrus zodiacs. Trixie squinted at him from behind oversized sunglasses that doubled as targeting optics. "You ever squeeze a lemon under sniper fire, Todd?" she asked casually, stirring her mimosa with a metal straw that had once impaled a surveillance droid. Todd blinked all 3 sets of eyelids and pivoted to compliment the juice's acidity cohesion, a phrase that made her want to deploy a waffle iron to his kneecap. Still, she played it cool, for now. Back at her suburban bunker, disguised as a modest Iowa home with a suspicious amount of concrete and an underground sauna powered by rage, she called in the only people she trusted, her former SEAL squad, now retired, disgraced, or banned from brunch venues in 3 countries. There was Lance Toaster Delmar, who once weaponized sourdough against a Krill Empire envoy, Sophia Giggles Tran, who used her sarcasm as a form of directed energy, and Kiki the Frother Ramirez, an ex-barista who had turned foam art into a form of passive-aggressive threat display. Together, with a cooler full of suspicious orange juice and an intergalactic corkscrew pulsing with residual psychic interference, they formed Bruth, the boozy resistance unit for tactical humanity. Meanwhile, across brunch zones worldwide, Glorpint agents were experiencing setbacks. Their disguises were unraveling, partially due to cultural missteps like serving avocado toast with diplomatic declarations and calling bacon a pork-based social glue. One poor operative tried to infiltrate a Miami rooftop bar and accidentally detonated when exposed to EDM basslines, apparently incompatible with their enzyme stability. The worst loss came aboard the cruise ship Carnival Reckoning, where an overzealous Glorpint agent disguised as Chadwick the Enlightened attempted to host a bottomless brunch seminar and was promptly thrown overboard by a bachelorette party, chanting mimosas before mind control. Back on Earth's surface, Trixie was running trials. She blended alien pulp with Prosecco and poured it into shot glasses shaped like tactical grenades. Giggles monitored brainwaves while Kiki read, off the side effects, telepathy, mild euphoria, sudden multilingualism, and, most dangerously, a tendency to insult people in 5 dimensions. "If we stabilize this," Kiki noted while loading Irish whiskey into a modified espresso cannon, "we could weaponize brunch, like, officially." The team cheered. Lance toasted with a flaming mimosa. In orbit, Supreme Brine Warden Glithrax watched Earth's reaction with mounting confusion. Instead of submission, humans were developing cocktails that accidentally granted limited extrasensory perception. His memo drone returned with troubling data. Earth was now producing beverages called Pulp Protocol, Citrus Vengeance, and hive this, you slimy bastards. Even worse, the hashtag Zest Rebellion was trending across 8 continents. Glithrax began to leak from his motivational pores. He summoned Spindlewort 7 for explanation, who, now visibly vibrating from stress, suggested maybe we underestimated their, sociocultural fermentation rituals? Glithrax blinked slowly. You mean brunch? Spindlewort nodded. With all due respect, sir, I think they're drunk enough to start a religion. Glithrax shrieked. Earth was not only resisting, it was evolving, buzzed, belligerent, and building momentum. Somewhere in Montana, a militia of wine moms had begun synchronizing their telepathic buzz to repel HOA bylaws. In Berlin, techno clubs were distributing mind-altering grapefruit tinctures. In defiance of planetary law, and in Trixie's war bunker, Bruth was testing the first prototype of the Mimosa bomb, a non-lethal area denial weapon that combined explosive zest particles with psionic confusion and slight nausea. It smells like brunch, Lance noted, ducking behind cover. And poor choices, Sophia added, shielding her mimosa. Trixie just smiled, sunburn glowing, eyes gleaming with psychotic brunch pride. Good, she said. Then it's working. Outside, a Glorpant scout hovered just close enough to hear her mutter, "Let's see them digest this." The drone fled before it caught her smirk full force. Earth wasn't falling. It was getting buzzed, locked, and brunch-loaded for war. By the time the Glorpant Dominion realized Earth had skipped straight from brunch to biochemical insurgency, it was too late to recall the enzymes, or the lawsuits. Entire brunch districts had gone rogue. New York's Lower East Mimosa declared sovereignty via group toast. In Lisbon, rogue mixologists formed the Citrus Underground and began fermenting their own psychic countercompounds in espresso barrels lined with sarcasm. And somewhere off the Florida coast, the Carnival Reckoning cruise ship had transformed into a floating psionic fortress, broadcasting karaoke-based psychological warfare on open frequencies. Back in her Iowa base, which now had an improvised skylight shaped like a margarita glass from an earlier test, Trixie Bragstone was surrounded by maps made of waffle batter and mood boards powered by resentment. She had tapped into the neural resonance of the alien enzyme using her ex-husband's telepathic corkscrew, a magnifying glass shaped like a martini, and Kiki's emotionally volatile espresso cannon, now upgraded with sentient foam. Trixie stared into a glass of experimental Prosecco vinegar concentrate and muttered, I can hear their plans. Also, their insecurity about their tentacle length. Bruth was now fully operational, having converted the backyard into a brunchified tactical operations center. Tables were covered in energy drink schematics, mimosa delivery drones buzzed like confused bees, and the waffle iron had been declared a Class II sacred relic. Kiki, multitasking between weapon calibration and latte foam therapy, growled, The compound's mutating. It's making people brutally honest. Lance just told me his spirit animal is a crab with debt. Good, said Trixie, strapping on her glitter-armored brunch vest. Let them taste humanity's most unstable compound. Feelings. They'd already field-tested the Zesty Justice grenade in a local HOA meeting, where a single detonation resulted in 3 divorces, 1 marriage proposal, and a spontaneous dance-off. The Glorpant agents couldn't cope. Designed for orderly hive control, their minds fractured when confronted by emotionally unstable day drinkers with unresolved childhood traumas and no filter. Reports flooded in from across the globe. Glorpant. Commandos were found in fetal slime curls, whimpering after being told, You remind me of my father, but with more damp disappointment. Even worse, their enzyme was now unstable. Humans were adapting at cocktail speed. Trixie's modified blend, codenamed Project Bottomless Thunder, was rewriting synaptic feedback in real time, granting volunteers the ability to insult people across interdimensional language spectrums. One unfortunate Glorpant liaison was reduced to a wailing puddle after Sophia called his symbiotic robe a mood ring for bad decisions. Supreme Brine Warden Glithrax tried launching a psychic counteroffensive titled Operation Emotional Synchronization, but it failed when their telepathic transmissions were hijacked by Bruth and replaced with passive-aggressive brunch playlists and angry Yelp reviews. Glithrax was beginning to unravel, both emotionally and literally. Why, he gurgled, Do their insults smell like cinnamon and pain? Back in the Bruth war room, Trixie was preparing for the final move. She'd deciphered the enzymes, molecular rhythm, yes, rhythm, and learned to sync it with a tactical drumline made from cocktail shakers. Music, she declared, stirring a glowing drink, is the back door to mind control, and brunch jazz is our sledgehammer. Bruth loaded their mimosa canisters, now equipped with multi-dimensional flavor triggers and weaponized zest clouds. Kiki deployed the froth blaster, mounted on a golf cart painted with the words, "Diplomacy this." Sophia played a battle anthem on a keytar that doubled as a frequency jammer. And Trixie, standing atop a patio umbrella-turned command post, raised her glass and declared, "Let's brunch them into submission." The final strike began with synchronized sips and a barrage of psychic spritzes across major alien hubs. Glorpant ships orbiting Earth found their crew emotionally compromised. After a single whiff of the new compound, captains broke down mid-commands, confessing childhood slime shame. Officers began jazzercising uncontrollably to Earth's brunchwave broadcasts. On the ground, Glorpant agents either fled, sobbed, or tried mimicking human brunch culture, resulting in tragic attempts to grill bacon on psionic field generators. The Glorpant Dominion's proud mental manipulation initiative had collapsed beneath the weight of unfiltered sarcasm, emotional instability, and alcohol-infused improvisation. The war wasn't just being lost, it was being mocked into submission. And at the heart of it, wearing tactical flip-flops and a smirk sharp enough to deflect plasma, was Trixie Bragstone, sunburned, unbothered, and armed with a mimosa that could mentally disarm a planetary governor. The final assault was near, and she hadn't even finished her brunch. The Intergalactic Council of Passive-Aggressive Conquest was not prepared for a woman in a glittery scarf duct-taped to a Navy SEAL uniform, marching through the main diplomatic chamber, holding a bottle of bubbling orange doom, like it was a sacred relic and not, as she later described it, a breakfast grenade with better taste than your planetary anthem. Trixie Bragstone did not walk so much as swagger into the Council's sterile amphitheater, her combat boots echoing against the marble-like psionic flooring, leaving faint citrus footprints with each unapologetic step. The chamber's attending, dignitaries, gelatinous, crystalline, multi-throated, and perpetually condescending, turned to face what they assumed was an accidental delegate. They were wrong. They were so wrong that future academic programs would classify this exact moment as the great oh-no supreme brine warden Glithrax, now a vaguely quivering gelatin pile with what might have once been authority, tried to bellow, but it came out more like a moist gargle. "You, human female, are not authorized." Trixie popped the cork. The sound echoed like a champagne thunderclap across dimensions. A cloud of hyper-fermented, psychically charged citrus vapor bloomed into the air and washed over the council like judgment with pulp. Several ambassadors hiccuped in harmony. One immediately confessed to embezzling from their planetary disaster fund to buy mood lighting. Another began singing. Trixie stepped forward, lit a cigar with a plasma lighter shaped like a duck, and took a slow drag while the council teetered between submission and brunch enlightenment. "Gentle beings," she said, voice equal parts gravel and tequila. "Your wine tried to control my mind. All it did was make me telepathic enough to win every family argument since birth, and slightly better at karaoke." Glithrax attempted to counter with a regulation citation, but only managed to cough up an interdimensional wine cooler. Spindlewort 7, now dressed entirely in Earth merchandise, and having clearly lost allegiance several mimosas ago, stood and announced, "We regret the attempted brunch-based subjugation of your species." He winced. "Respectfully." Trixie grinned. "No hard feelings, but we've got a counteroffer." She pulled out a branded bottle labeled Mind Control Rosé TM. Now with less submission, more sass. "We're licensing your failed invasion tech. You now owe Earth 12% royalties, emotional damages, and a cease and desist on calling. Anything zest forward unless you've bled for it." The chamber fell silent, broken only by the sound of one sentient nebula sobbing into a mimosa flute. "Oh," she added, casually flicking the cork into a diplomatic aide's soup. "And we're opening an embassy. It's a floating tiki bar in geosynchronous orbit, staffed by sentient raccoons and legally classified as an interstellar neutral brunch zone. The Council, already mentally compromised by the airborne citrus telepathy and terrified of another round of brunch-based psychological warfare, unanimously agreed before she even finished the sentence. The treaty was scrawled in glitter pen on a napkin from a Miami bar called Suck It, Oppression, and was immediately ratified as binding galactic law. Back on Earth, Bruth celebrated by launching a mimosa-fueled fireworks display visible from lunar orbit, spelling out "Submit to the brunch" in cursive fizz. Humanity was now not only safe, but drunk on power, and literally drunk. Alien civilizations began sending ambassadors to study Earth's brunch strategy, leading to the accidental creation of an entirely new form of diplomacy known as orange foam, relational conflict resolution, which mostly involved pancakes, passive aggression, and emotional breakthroughs over Irish coffee. Glorpint vessels were repurposed into food trucks. Their bureaucracy was absorbed by Earth's Department of Beverage Compliance and Snark, now led by barista Kiki the Frother Ramirez, who mandated that all interstellar treaties begin with complimentary espresso shots and a roast, personal, not coffee. Glithrax, now rehabilitated and rebranded as a flavor consultant, opened a boutique mimosa bar in lower orbit called The Zesty Mistake. As for Trixie Bragstone, she was promoted to head of Intergalactic Beverage Security, where her official duties included conducting high-risk cocktail interrogations and drinking hostile species under the table during ceasefire talks. She ended each negotiation with the same toast. "Tell your emperor I said cheers, and next time, spike the kale smoothie instead. We don't drink those." And thus, the galaxy learned that while you can outgun humanity, and maybe even outthink them, you can never outdrink a sunburned seal with PTSD, a blender, and deeply incorrect opinions about champagne.